You're listening to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
If you or your patients struggle with muscle cramps, spasms, soreness, or restless leg syndrome, you're going to want to hear about our non-opioid TheraWorks Relief. TheraWorks Relief is a clinically proven and published locally acting topical solution that prevents and relieves muscle cramps, spasms, and soreness in the legs and feet. In a research study including patients diagnosed with restless leg syndrome, TheraWorks Relief was shown to reduce symptoms commonly associated with accompanying RLS, including muscle cramps and spasms. Muscle cramps are reported as a side effect of hundreds of prescription medications, from intravenous iron sucrose and conjugated estrogens to statins and diuretics. By managing muscle cramps, TheraWorks Relief supports adherence, helping patients stay on important and often life-saving medications. TheraWorks Relief comes in an easy-to-use, fast-absorbing, non-greasy foam that can prevent muscle cramps and spasms with just a few simple applications a day. To learn more about TheraWorks Relief, go to theraworksrelief.com and click on the Healthcare Professional link.
Here's the thing. You're busy. You're a professional. Maybe you're a pharmacist, and you know you're capable of doing more, doing much more, and living a more organized, less stressful, purposeful, and freedom-driven life. Let's talk, let's share, and let's grow together as an industry, as healthcare providers, and as a better unified community. It may seem like some of these things don't easily fit together. After all, what do career coaching, marketing strategy, networking, and pharmacy have in common? Welcome to the RX Buzz. Your host is a pharmacist, a wife, a mother, an entrepreneur, and a proven motivational career coach, Ashley Clevens-Hayes. This is the RX Buzz Podcast, a collaboration between RX Ashley and the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Hey there, RX Buzz listeners. This is Ashley here, coming from RX Ashley at the Pharmacy Podcast Network, and I am super excited to have this special guest on the show today. It's kind of a big deal. He is super fun, super interesting person to talk to, but also I love what he's preaching for us here in California, and I also just really enjoy conversations with him. I've gotten to know him over the last decade of my training, and I have John Roth, CEO of California Pharmacists Association, with us today. John, welcome to the RX Buzz.
Good morning, Ashley. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. This is cool. I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy. I think this conversation has been long overdue because I can't express to you enough how many pharmacists I talk to who just don't simply quite understand the importance of why it's important to be involved, not only on a local level, a statewide level, but a national level too. So it's great that you're going to be here today and share some tips and tricks on why it's important to be involved. But before we jump into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into the role you're in now?
Sure, happy to. So I really have grown up my professional career in healthcare, and in particular healthcare associations. I sort of came upon the whole policy world of government affairs and advocacy early on in my career. And just sort of found a niche for it, really found a passion and a love for wanting to move the needle in terms of the health professions at a higher level. You know, they say much more can be done with the power of a pen than anything else. And so using my resources, my talents, my skills, hopefully been able to move the needle in pharmacy and, you know, provide some leadership to a really incredible group of practitioners who are serving their patients every day out there in the community pharmacy and hospital pharmacy and specialty pharmacies.
I love it. So California Pharmacists Association is what you are CEO of, but you're also involved more on a national level too, which I don't think a lot of people know. So do you want to expand upon a little bit about that and kind of tell us what that means for maybe California in general, but also globally what that means for pharmacy?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. So I sort of wear multiple hats, but the two hats in particular as CEO of California Pharmacists Association is, you know, we're very fortunate to be the largest state association in the country. And with that, we think comes a lot of opportunity, but also some great responsibility to sort of lead the way and provide some perspective and some roadmaps for other states and perhaps national policy to follow. But also I serve as currently the president of the National Alliance of State Pharmacy Associations. which is a national association of folks like myself, the CEOs of their respective state associations. And in that way, we network and we resource share, and we mutually learn from one another, best practices in states. And I'm just privileged to have an opportunity to be the president for the current year.
So is that organization only involved with the higher level leadership of the state organizations? Is that my understanding? Because I'm not familiar with this organization, really.
Yeah, that's correct. So all the CEOs are the representatives of the NASPA organization, and they are the linkage to their state pharmacy associations through that group.
And then do they have an affiliation with national organizations?
They do. So one of the primary roles of NASPA, as we call it, the National Alliance, is that it serves as really a conduit between the state pharmacy associations and the national associations. They provide resources and are great about gathering national data, communicating with our national partners, so that each of us at the states aren't sort of individually having to do that, and we can have a unified message with our great staff at NASPA sitting down and working with the nationals on those broader level policy issues.
So the rumor that pharmacy is a totally ununited profession is a little bit inaccurate, what I'm getting.
It is. You know, I have the privilege of meeting with the national organizations, again, just by virtue of wearing both hats as CEO of California as well as NASPA president on a regular basis. And there is a lot of unity, a lot of synergy. Even though they have different organizations, the leadership, I could say, from my observations, are very committed to working together.
I love that. That just made my day, because that's totally different than what's been rumored forever. So I think that that's awesome. We need to learn more about that. And let's have you on another podcast to talk more specifically about how, like, what it is that you guys are doing specifically to unite the whole organization or the whole profession in general. But what I really want to talk about today, and it's burning my heart right now, because and as you know, I talk to pharmacists every day, all the time now, in my own business. But one of the things that I speak to and I preach on is really networking, how to better your career, and how, leveraging your network and leveling up your skills and being able to get jobs my goal is to not apply to a job. One of the questions I ask people right from the get-go when they turn to me for support is, how are you building your network? And also, are you involved in your local pharmacy organizations or national, or what it is that you're doing? And just before we got on this recording, I told you, 99.9% of people pharmacists either say, no, I'm not involved, or yes, I am involved, I just don't really get involved. So I guess I pay my dues, but I don't really know what that X amount of money goes to. So the primary reason what I want to dig into today, and I'm going to ask you some hard questions, and I recognize that these are hard questions, but it's really getting down to the meat of why it's so important for us to be involved. And why it's so important for us not to only just financially be giving into our profession, but also for other ways that we can be giving back to the profession. And that's something that I think, you can shine so much light on us. So I guess the first thing that we could talk about is, honestly, John, so talk to us about why is it so important for us to be involved?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ashley, and I'm so glad we can have this conversation. Probably not surprising to you, I get this question individually or in small groups as I move around the state from pharmacists as well, and I'm talking to them about membership and some of the activities that we're doing that are exciting here at CPhA. But really how I would break it down is this way. There's the individual benefit, which I think most members, when they talk to you or talk to me, are looking for. What is the individual benefit of joining and belonging to the association? But then there's sort of the other side of that lens, which is what is the collective benefit? And that's usually a more outward-looking perspective on why does my voice matter? Why is it important that I belong for the benefit of the profession overall? But recognizing on the individual benefit side, I would unpack it this way. There's really, I would say, 4 primary values that an individual pharmacist or student pharmacist or technician would receive for participating in their state pharmacy association. One is, you mentioned it briefly, is building that network. All pharmacists, all student pharmacists eventually are going to need a job. And what better way to meet your next boss than to participate through a collective group of pharmacists who are in various positions that can create that network for you. Or maybe it's a study group, or maybe it's a EPS exam group, study group, or what have you. Building that network is really the number one reason an individual benefit would result from getting involved in the state association.
Mm-hmm.
The second issue, and we can go back and revisit these in more detail, but I sort of want to unpack them real quickly for us.
Please unpack. We have all the time that we need. I've been super excited to talk to you about this because the reason is I get this question every single day. So
yeah,
it really is it's a critical, really just valuable conversation. So again, please feel free to unpack. I give you full permission.
Perfect. Thank you. Very, very generous with your time. So that first one is building a network. The second one is legislative relevance. And admittedly, when you talk to a pharmacist about, well, what is the individual benefit I get from sort of that legislative relevance, their eyes begin to glaze over a little bit. They think, I don't want to deal with that. That's very high level. What does that actually mean to me in my practice every day? But the bottom line is, I used the phrase already in our conversation, that the power of the pen at Sacramento is mightier than anything that we can do individually in our practices. And so legislative relevance and the items that we're working on behalf of pharmacy generally and individual pharmacists in terms of their practices, their livelihood, are extremely important. And that's a key part of belonging.
Can you explain to us a little bit more about that? Because that's just something that, like you said it, John, glazed over a little bit. So legislatively speaking, can you give us an example of, what does that mean for us?
Absolutely. It's actually great timing. So we just concluded at the end of September the 2017-18 legislative cycle here in California. Mm-hmm. And CPhA tracked and weighed into 52 legislative proposals that impacted pharmacists. Each of those required us to do an analysis, to meet with the sponsors of those bills. Some were favorable towards pharmacist practice, some were antagonistic towards pharmacist practice. And our ability to weigh in and to negotiate, support, or ultimately kill a legislative bill amongst those 52 absolutely has real-time value. Give you one example. There were 7 of those 52 bills this year that would have imposed some sort of negative mandate on pharmacists.
Yeah.
Everything from unfunded mandates at the pharmacy counter to restrictions in scope of practice or requiring unnecessary regulations in terms of practice. And we were able to kill all of those 7 bills that would have had a negative impact on pharmacist practice.
Yeah,
so right there, that's a very, very tangible outcome.
So do you work with,
talked about legislative?
Yeah. So do you work, and logistically speaking, do you work with attorneys to do this, or is this what CPhA does? Do we have in-house staff that does this? I'm just curious, how does this work?
Yeah, great question. So
I have so many questions.
That's fine.
I'm learning.
So internally, we have 2 outstanding government affairs staff members. One of them is our lobbyist, Michelle Rivas. One of them is our government relations manager, Danny Martinez. In addition, we hire external lobbyists as well that are on contract with CPhA.
Got it.
And we have 2 of those folks. So that's really the horsepower behind conducting those analyses, doing the effective lobbying to represent pharmacist interests every day.
This is so powerful. So I think what we lose sight of is this collective benefit. To be honest, I think that's what it is. I think we see it as, oh my gosh, another check I have to write amongst my other checks. And, networking is one thing. I think it's an excellent tool, an excellent resource, but really the collective benefit I'm feeling really outweighs the individual benefit here.
Yeah, and actually the legislative component of what I'm describing, I would argue, goes both ways. There's absolutely an individual benefit because the things that will happen here in Sacramento, the capital, or at the Board of Pharmacy, where we also represent pharmacists, will ultimately go into each individual's practice. It will affect their pocketbook. It will affect the way they practice, how they practice, etc. But then there is the more collective benefit that you're describing as well, where we have overall wins for the profession, and that moves the profession forward, either progressively, like some of our scope of practice work, or it effectively defends something that would be negative towards pharmacy practice. So I think it goes both ways on the legislative relevance.
So who decides if it's positive or negative for a profession?
So that's one of the beautiful things in how we conduct our work. So on staff here, the folks that I mentioned a few minutes ago, they're not pharmacists.
Yeah.
But the beauty of working through our volunteers, through our special interest groups, through our board of trustees, they provide us both clinical and experiential inputs in terms of our analysis on those bills. Now, unfortunately, even though my staff are not pharmacists, we have a lot of horsepower to review a bill and just say inherently, hey, look, this is going to be negative to the practice of pharmacy. But if we have questions about clinical implications or how something may literally show up in a hospital or community pharmacy or what have you, we've got a depth of resources, which, by the way, is also an important reason for pharmacists to belong, so we can access their expertise to go to make those analyses.
Why do you think, in your experience, because you've been in this position for almost 10 years now, just over 9 years, why do you think not enough pharmacists are involved? Or not all pharmacists are involved?
Yeah, that is the $1 million question.
Listen, this is a sensitive conversation. I am asking the hard questions.
Absolutely. I mean, I wish, honestly, that every pharmacist understood the impact of what their voice and their resources bring to the profession.
Right.
And you know, we just came off yesterday. I know by the time this will air, it's going to be some weeks ago from a midterm election.
Sure.
And you hear a lot of the banter about every voice matters and what have you. But I can tell you it's very, very true, actually. Every voice matters. And so by definition, the more voices we represent, the louder that voice becomes. The louder that voice becomes, the more impact we can have. And the more impact we can have, the better the life of a pharmacist.
Sure.
So it's absolutely interconnected. And
So,
I wish every pharmacist could step back and sort of think about that in terms of how their contribution rolls up into a greater good for themselves as well as the overall profession.
it's a great segue. So when you mean contribution, what does a contribution look like? Does it mean money, or does it mean volunteer work, or does it mean actually showing up to meetings? Like what could behoove the pharmacist and CPhA, or just in general? How do we logistically do that? Is it just paying a check, or is it showing up to meetings, or is obviously it's everything? But what if we can't do everything?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The answer is yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah.
One of my sort of common or famous phrases is, and we talk about this on the staff team all the time and amongst our board of trustees, is we need to meet the member where they're at. So if you're a new pharmacy school graduate, you're in your first year PGY1 perhaps, you're in a very different space than perhaps the 20-year veteran pharmacist in practice. Your needs are different, your values are different in terms of what you want from the association and what you're willing to contribute back to the association. So it could be that you are just a checkbook member. You know that your dues are going to an organization that's doing all these wonderful things on behalf of yourself as well as the profession collectively. It could be that you want to get more like literally actively involved. You want to volunteer for one of our task forces, or perhaps run for an elected office, or sit on an actual standing committee where you're dedicating your expertise and your time and treasure from your knowledge base to moving our issues forward. Or perhaps it's all localized. Perhaps you just want to get involved at your local association level and help recruit the next group of pharmacists coming in and moving into the community and making them feel welcome and connecting them with other like-minded pharmacists. So it really shows up differently based on where the pharmacist is coming from. And we don't try to say there's one right way or wrong way. It's our job to provide a platform, I think, to welcome them and to allow them to contribute their time, talents, and treasures in what way it makes sense for them and fills the needs for the organization.
Yeah, I agree with you. Who's the most active in the organization? I think I know the answer, but I'm just curious. What is your thoughts?
Who in terms of like a stage of practice, or?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, sorry. So let me be more specific. So in terms of your memberships and the people who are involved and actively participating on a day-to-day ground level, is it the students that that you think show up to be the highest voice?
So I would say it's bimodal. So certainly students are a very, very active group that are wonderfully engaged in the life of the organization. But we also see that about 5 to 15 years into practice, that group is very highly engaged. Those are folks who have some practice experience and typically want to come back and serve in a more subject matter expert way, like on a task force or a committee or even the board of trustees after they've gained that experience. So I think the groups of students and the groups of 5 to 15 years post-grad are the two most active.
Yeah, what I see is, and the reason why it's kind of a leading question is that, I was moderating a leadership event a couple months ago, and the students, the first year, second year, third year, fourth year, really just the first and second years, were super excited to be there. And they had these genius ideas. Like, I'm not kidding you. They were phenomenal ideas. And I told the thing I left with, I left the last sentiment I made to them is, don't lose your steam. You guys we get so excited in school. We're motivated. We're surrounded by each other. We're surrounded by just being involved. But then you graduate, you kind of, your student loans start to kick in. You get in your life, you get married, you get into your family zone, and you kind of transition away from focusing on school, and you transition into being in your careers and doing awesome things in your personal life. My thing, what I told them is don't forget about us. Don't forget about your profession. Don't lose that steam. And a lot of times I see that. I saw it in myself, to be totally honest. I was super involved with the residency. I moved out of state. I was still involved in the state organization, but definitely wasn't my first priority. So my hope, and through this podcast and through being involved on an academic level, is that we really nurture that transition from being a student to new practitioner to being a practicing pharmacist. How can we support that group more and not to forget how important this is?
Well, your experience is exactly like ours. And what we see is upon graduation from pharmacy school, we sort of see this sharp decline in terms of involvement and membership. And then it's about that 5th year mark I was talking about, they start to come back to it.
I'm totally the statistic.
Yeah, exactly. And I understand, like you said, they graduate, I call it getting a house and a spouse and a job and moving and all those things. Life gets in the way. And I think anything we can do to bridge that gap, even if they just remain checkbook members at that point and just remain engaged with our communications and plugged in and maybe showing up once in a while to a local to network and recharge their batteries with their colleagues in the community, I think that would be tremendous.
I agree with you.
There's real opportunity there.
I agree with you. So talk to me about some of the cool things that CPhA is doing and what we have in the pipeline.
Yeah, boy, we've got just a tremendous number of activities going on. Seems like always. I always say it's like right now, but right now is always continuous. As I mentioned, we just came off a very successful legislative cycle. I'm very proud, actually, to mention, as it relates to that we had 100% success win for those 52 bills that we weighed into.
That's powerful.
So hopefully we're working smart. Hopefully we're working effectively and representing pharmacists to the very best that we can. From a practice standpoint, one of the things I'm really excited about, two things actually. One is, as your listeners may know, back in 2013, CPhA sponsored and thankfully our governor signed a bill that provided provider status in California for pharmacists, as well as expanded the scope of practice. And we've been working on a number of initiatives to implement those measures in practice since then. One of those is securing payments from plans and other payers for pharmacists to perform those services. And we're really starting to see some traction on that, which is going to, I think, provide wonderful new opportunities in terms of practice modalities and consulting pharmacists and what have you to explore those opportunities. The other thing that we're really excited about is that we are revamping our educational conference, which is called Western Pharmacy Exchange. You can check it out at westernpharmacyexchange.com, and it's really a celebration of pharmacy practice. And one of the things that our board has been talking about for about the last 18 months is, I think we all go to pharmacy conferences, whether national or in our states or regionally, and we get great CE, and we network with our colleagues and our friends, and maybe there's a social aspect to it. But one of the things we really wanted to do, again, being in California and feeling some responsibility to never resting in terms of innovation, is really explode both the technology use as well as the structure of our Western Pharmacy Exchange conference. So in April 12th through the 14th of next year, 2019, in Los Angeles, we're going to be unveiling a whole new Western Pharmacy Exchange, have a lot of really cool things to help pharmacists get connected to themselves, to their colleagues, to business and industry, as well as just deploying some cool technology in the way we convey continuing education. So that's been taking up a lot of time, but it's also very exciting, and hopefully we'll see the fruits of that labor come first quarter of next year.
I think you guys are doing an awesome job. I love it.
Thank you.
And I don't think we give enough credit to the organizations for supporting us. So if anyone's not said this to you before, thank you on behalf of my profession. I appreciate what you do. I obviously don't really practice traditional pharmacy anymore, but my heart and soul is in this profession, and I really believe in elevating our profession, and this is just my way of giving back. So on behalf of myself, my family, because I'm third generation pharmacist, I appreciate what you guys are doing. For some reason, I just have a really good feeling about what CPhA is doing. And, I lived in Sacramento, so I had the opportunity to go visit you guys a few times. And I really want to give you guys kudos and just all the applause that I think you guys are really moving the needle. So I know on behalf of at least me and my family, and I can't speak for everyone, but I do think that everyone, at least my colleagues, agree that CPhA is doing an awesome job. And I think you are spearheading that. So thanks, John, for your time. And I think this was awesome. Anything else you want to leave us?
Well, I just appreciate it as well, Ashley. This platform and being able to talk about the importance of belonging is tremendous. I can have all the individual conversations with non-members in the world, and it won't reach the same audience. Mm-hmm. We really do see the collective benefit. The more pharmacists join, the more pharmacists belong, the more we can do. I mean, I appreciate your acknowledgement of what we've done so far, but the bottom line is the more pharmacists join, the more we can do even beyond that. So I really encourage pharmacists to step up and step into membership and service to the association. Yeah. It matters. They're important. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to share that message with your listeners today.
Thanks, John. And just a special note, I guess, to my audience is that I just want to be really transparent and really direct with everyone and saying, I've been involved with with pharmacy organizations essentially my whole career, before my career, because my dad was super involved. But I don't really, the reason why I ask these hard questions, and maybe they're a little sensitive questions, is that I don't fully understand what goes on behind the closed doors and what goes on in the Senate of, for pharmacy specifically. But I do recognize that there is importance in it. So I may or may not be one of those checkbook members, through my transitions, but I am seeing it day to day with pharmacists who reach out to me saying how unhappy they are with their jobs, or that they want change, or they don't want to do X and they want to do Y. The thing is you have to do something about it. So whether, right, like John mentioned, whether you are a checkbook member or you are an active president of a local pharmacy organization, it doesn't really matter. You have to do something. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to bring John on, and one of the reasons why I am continuously bringing the sensitive subject up and asking the hard questions, is because I hear a lot of you. I hear you. I see you. I feel you. I talk to you every single day that you want change. Change has to start from within. So I would encourage you guys, even if you don't live in California, obviously a lot of you guys don't. I just so happen to live in California. And I asked John to be on, but he doesn't he's not all the states. You need to go to your own state and you need to go get involved at that level. It really does make a difference. And I couldn't speak for myself. And so that's why I brought the expert John on to really represent that for us. So again, thanks John for hanging on. I appreciate you letting me go on my little bit of a tangent, but it's been awesome having you, and I will see you in a couple months in LA, if not sooner.
Sounds great, Ashley. Thanks again for your time.
Of course.
This was just the beginning. If this was your first time listening to the RX Buzz, we welcome you and thank you for giving us a chance. And if you're an old friend, one of our subscribers, we cherish you and look forward to hearing from you. And now, we need your help. We ask that you share this podcast with just one person you know who's in the healthcare industry. If this podcast can help just one person, we believe it will have a chain reaction, having an impact on dozens, hundreds, thousands, and someday, millions of people. Thank you for your help. We truly appreciate you. And thank you for listening to the RX Buzz, part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network.